we're ready to join the beading to the top of our finished front camisole, and this requires an Entredeux to fabric technique. So what I've done is I've drawn a line 1 inch from the raw edge to give me a nice clean straight edge across here with my wash away pen, and I'm going to place this with the right side down. Actually, this is such a beautiful piece of Swiss, it doesn't look like there is a right or wrong side. And that is a good, that means you've got good quality piece of Swiss. I'm going to run, now on yours, you'll probably already have yours kind of cut out. On this one, I haven't got it cut out, but I'm going to leave myself a generous portion on each side so I can use it for the pattern later. And I'm going to run a row of little beads of basting glue right above the line here, all the way across, even across the lace. And that's gonna, I'm gonna press my the seam tape of my next to the Entredeux on my beading right on top of this, so I can align that together. That means that both sides don't have to have the same seam allowance as long as you're careful to follow a line. So I want this line to match up to this line. So we're going to simply go along here and press that. I'm folding it back like this so I can align it with my blue line. And you can somewhat see the blue line underneath the holes. So if you're seeing the blue line underneath the holes, you're lining it up just right. So if you take the time to draw lines straight and you take the time to add a little precision to your sewing, sometimes you have to baste something, sometimes you have to stop and draw a line, do it. It makes your sewing that much more precise. So I think that will do it for adding that. So let's go to the sewing machine and let me show you what you'll need to do to finish this. Okay, we're back at the machine. I am still using my center guide blade foot for this part, and I've got 80 weight thread in the top and the bobbin and a 65 machine needle. I'm set on a straight stitch at 2.0 stitch length, and I've just adjusted my needle slightly to the right so that it wouldn't actually penetrate the stitched edge. I want it to be right next into the fabric. So if I follow, let me get that going. If I follow along, I'm watching the edge of my blade foot right along the edge of my Entredeux. And this is the first part of a two-part step. We have to sew the seam first, and then we have to roll and whip to finish the seam allowance. And so once I get this sewn in, I will show you how to roll and whip the edge. So we've sewn it down, and if you can't see, my stitching line, I know you can't see this because the thread is so fine, but my stitching line is right there. And we'll eventually we'll flip this up, and you'll see the beautiful little holes right there when we press it. But right now, what we're going to need to do to prepare for our rolling and whipping is we're going to come along and we're going to cut all that seam allowance off about an eighth of an inch or 1/16 of an inch from that stitching line. You just want to leave just a tiny bit of a seam allowance, about like that. If you can see that, I'm cutting that much off, and I have about 1/8 of an inch right next to that stitching. And then once I've cut all this off, I will come back and show you how to roll and whip that. Okay, we're back at the machine, and we've trimmed off our edge to where we have just a 1/8 inch little seam allowance from our stitching line. And I've switched to a clear foot so I can see under it. And I have a 65 needle and 80 weight thread in the top and the bobbin. And I've set the machine on a zigzag. And this machine has an overcast, so it lets you zigzag on the right hand side. So I set it on that. If your machine doesn't do that, that's okay. You can have just a regular zigzag. I have it set on a 2.0 stitch length and a 3.0 stitch width. The object is for the needle to pierce right next to the entredeux in the stitching line and then off the edge of the fabric. It may be, you don't want your needle to stitch into the fabric, because stitching off the fabric will create the rolling and whipping that you're trying to achieve. So I'm going to stitch now, and I may have to adjust as I go along, but let's just see what happens and if I get the roll and whip that I want. Let me just continue on here. Let me stitch a little further so I can bring it around and show you what it looks like. Once it starts rolling and whipping, the machine, the needle just does all the work. Okay, we finished stitching, and I adjusted it as I was stitching, and I decided that a 1.0 stitch length and a 3.0 stitch width was really ideal. And this is how tiny your little rolled and whipped seam is going to be. It's right next to your entredeux, and then when you flip this to the other side, and I'm going to press this, you have a nice pretty little edge right next to your fabric, and right next to it finishes the top of that lace also. And this is the top part of our camisole where our ribbon is going to run through that. And then on this other side, on the other edge, is where we're going to add our straps. So that really concludes our segment on how to use entredeux, how to apply it to lace, and how to apply it to a fabric edge. And we'd like to thank Diane for letting us share this on her blog, and I hope you can visit SewBeautifulMag.com and learn more about us.